So I'm James Brooksby. I'm the CEO of Edgecase Games, and I'm going to talk about premium to free to play. But what I should do initially is explain what those terms mean to me, because premium in the context of my studio and my experience, it's not about premium free to play in mobile. So if you're a mobile premium team or looking at mobile free-to-play or anything like this, my experience and what I'm going to talk to you about is more linked to console and PC. If you saw my talk yesterday, you'll understand about my business, but it'll become clear when I go through this. And I'll talk about, for us, our experience is very personal to us and our studio, but hopefully you can learn from that. But to get started, seeing as we're just after lunch, let's start with a video.
Space has been the final resting place of too many men too soon. My job is to ensure that this won't be your fate. You have been selected from the best minds we have. You will take charge of one of the most advanced spacecraft ever assembled as part of an elite fleet. You will achieve your objectives. Strategy is the key to any successful engagement. First, know your enemy. If you specialize as a light or medium attack, assess your opponent's strengths, weaknesses, and threat level. Commanders of heavy cruisers should move into position to lay siege to hostiles while overcoming firepower. Those of you who pilot support craft must perform the vital role of repairing and augmenting Allied ships in the thick of battle. From the front lines, call out threats to the team's long-range attack vessels. They will keep the heavies at bay, so you can continue to push forward. To overpower the enemy, you must outthink them. And the enemy exists in every known sector. Each battle will take you closer to your goal. You have everything you need at your disposal. Now, go make it happen.
So that was Fractured Space. That's the game that we've been working on for the last couple of years. We've just went live on open beta on Steam. So go and play it, have a look, and you can watch that great video that we just made online. And it will be a nice full frame rate, and you can actually tell what's going on. So anyway, so who am I? If some of you came yesterday, you'll already heard some of this, but for those who are new. So I've been making games professionally for about 20 years. Started in 1995, but actually I was making games with my big brother in the 80s, just sitting on the end of his bed making pixel art for the early home computers. But actually when I left university, I decided that actually games was my thing, that's what I wanted to do, and started at a company called Simis, who were making flight sims because I was a 3D modeler at the time, and that's what I wanted to get into. And flight sim companies were one of the few companies doing real-time 3D. Simis became Kuju. I stayed there with that when we were like just a dozen odd people. We built up that to about 350 people over time. And then I got the opportunity to start 66, which was a digital distribution focused studio, small studio, but that was the real beginning of digital distribution. It sounds like such an obvious term now, but it was quite new in 2006-07 when we did it. Ran that for quite a long time, and then had the opportunity to do a management buyout of 66, which became Born Ready Games. For 2 years as Born Ready Games, we made a game called Strike Suit Zero, and then 2 years ago, Born Ready Games became Edgecase Games for very boring tax and investment reasons, but that's the kind of the story. And worked on lots and lots of projects over my years. Work for hire, you get like short projects, long projects, things that get cancelled and canned, all kinds of these different experiences. But one of the ones that I hold very fondly in my heart as a big project that we worked on was Warhammer 40,000 Fire Warrior in 2003 for PlayStation 2 and PC. I did lots of R&D projects in my time, so those are projects that could turn into a game concept, could turn into nothing, could just be a tech demo to prove our engine on PlayStation 2, things like that. And it was all work for hire, as I said, pretty much until 666, and then we did some interesting changes in our model in order to do, is that okay? To do some IP ownership, so actually we could start to really fend for ourselves, do some very indie publishing, do some good fun stuff. Game that we worked on then that was did reasonably well, a bit more famous. It was a game called Burn Zombie Burn. I got to dress up as a zombie a lot and go to shows and have fun doing that, which was great fun promoting. I do like to get involved. And then all these games, the important thing here is that they were all really premium. And premium to me, at least to this stage, meant something with a final delivery. We were working silently as a team in the background on a project that had, this is going to be a year project. We're working away quietly, doing our thing, and then we're going to deliver it, and we're going to put it out there with a single price point, and then we're going to add DLC. Pretty classic. It still happens obviously now, but that's what we were. That's what we've done. We were doing my experience for 20 odd years, and that's until Edge Case Games. So who's Edge Case Games? Who are we? So we're based in Guildford in the UK, which is very close to London. It's a great place to be, really very nice part of the world. We're 35 people. The development team is probably about 22, 24, something like that. And we have QA and admin and myself, accounts and community management as well on top of that. We're a very senior team. Lots of us have been around in the industry for a very long time, or we've been, even the people that have been less time, I suppose they've still been 10, 7 years through to 20 plus years in the games industry. So we consider ourselves quite senior. And that does mean with all that seniority and that time scale, we've been working on all different platforms, as you can imagine. PCs, consoles, mobiles, handhelds, VR, you name it, weird devices that never came out, all kinds of interesting things over our time. And we use agile methodology in what we do. It's interesting to hear agile being talked about yesterday and what that really means. We don't use agile to a book, we just use something that works for us and works well, but you can call it agile if you like. And we've been working on Fractured Space as Edge Case Games for 2 years. The game of the video that you saw that didn't work. So we previously created Strike Suit Zero, as I mentioned, and that game, the model for that was a premium again. We worked on that for a couple of years, put it out on Steam, and then we also did the Mac, VR, Linux, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And we were the first idea Xbox title at all. Right? So we worked very hard to get that badge of honor, which we were very proud of for Strike Suit Zero. Again, all kind of premium work. So you understand what Fractured Space is and the model that we moved into. Fractured Space is the high-level premise was, back when we first thought of it, was World of Tanks meets League of Legends in space. And if you play it and you see it, you'll go, oh yeah, so it is. There's other influences in it, but that was the concept that came out of me looking at the studio and looking at people playing World of Tanks and League of Legends, and we were making a space game. It's like movie executive thinking. I apologize for it, but there you go. That's what it was, and that's what we've made. It's PC free to play, hence the talk and what we're going to talk about. And 5v5, it has MOBA elements. It is all about you controlling gigantic spaceships, which you probably noticed from the video. And if you've seen it, we're very proud of our huge, high-quality spaceships that fly around. You're playing for territory and domination of territory, very much like you might see in other MOBAs. You have lanes, etc. And you're doing a tug-of-war, effectively, on those lanes in space. Lanes in space sounds odd. Play the game. You'll get it. It's cool. It works. It's got shooter elements in it, so your tactical play, landing shots, all those things, that's where some of the World of Tanks influence comes in. But you have to really play as a team. You really have to play as a team to win. You can't really solo it because it's 5v5. Your individual actions matter a lot in the way you play, etc. I won't spend too much time on this. It's got more of a MOBA-esque metagame. We've tried to work towards making sure it's really competitive and can work for esports. And there's a lot more to come. You know, we want to add console, there's more in the metagame, etc., etc. We've got a lot more we want to do with Fractured Space. We're very proud of it.
Welcome to the edge of known space. Out here, there's no diplomacy, no governments, just the sectors they pay us to fight for. They won't call it a war, but our people and theirs die just the same. This is home, a standard base of operations. The corporations built it, like everything out here. The forward stations, the mines, even the ships we fly. Your task is to take control of the system. Secure the mines first, then the sectors, and eliminate anyone who gets in the way. And this is your ship. The USR Pioneer. It's more than 1,200 meters long and has a crew of over 5,000. She packs a heavy punch. Look after her, and she'll look after you. Good luck, Captain.
Objective eliminated. Set space, normal conditions. Jump successful. Taking up defensive positions. Someone tell them to stop shooting us in the ass. Information with the package. Secured. Have reached objective. Hold for formation.
Let's move off the videos into our timeline of what we've been doing and so on. So as I said, we were Born Ready Games. We worked on Strike Suit Zero. What we noticed and what influenced our making of Fractured Space was that we could really see a change, or I could certainly see a change in what was going on in the industry as a whole, which influenced our decision to go to free-to-play. So I got asked yesterday, why free-to-play? Why did you do that decision? What was going on? And we were making digital distribution games for console primarily, with PC as maybe a secondary SKU. And in the back end of 2011, you could see a change in what was going on in the world. It was if people remember it well, it was when consoles were going TV, and they changed from a model that was very supportive of our kind of development at the time into something that was now looking to the big guys, and they changed their model of supporting and publicizing independent games, and we could see that meaning that we were going to have a problem in what we did. And also we could see business models that previously been tried but not work in the West come to the West. So it's obviously the rise of seeing things like World of Tanks and League of Legends being playing. I mean, I knew some people who'd worked at NCSoft previously, and they tried free-to-play in the West, and it really wasn't working. And I appreciate many of you from Eastern Europe or Russia would have seen free-to-play be very normal. If you have to imagine that, say, for Western Europe and North America at that time, it was more unusual and more of a big step to be making these changes. So we saw that coming, and I had to make a decision of what was going to happen with my studio and what we were going to do, because we could see problems coming for us in our business model at the time. So I looked across the team and said, well, mobile's picking up, there's all this interesting mobile stuff, but my team were pretty much hardcore console developers. So we concentrated, and I decided to concentrate on PC free-to-play because Steam was back on the rise. Some of you maybe in a different part of the industry or too young to know, but people thought PC was going to die, 5 years, 6 years earlier. PC was going to die. That was the end of PC gaming. I know it sounds shocking, but that was really a prediction in the early 2000s. So anyway, we moved to PC and made that our primary focus. We created Edge Case Games. Don't want to go over that too much. We talked about it yesterday. We focused on open development. We decided to do early access. We used Unreal 4. We started with 16 people at that point. Born Ready becoming Edge Case Games was 16 dev team. And November 2014, we put out Fractured Space, telling everybody it would be free to play, but actually we put a $10 get into the alpha on early access on Steam, which was an interesting choice in itself, but it was allowing us to raise further money. We knew we didn't have the entire finance to develop the entire project, start to finish, just on what we'd raised and what we had from what we had before. So we needed some revenue coming in. And also we'd seen interesting things happening with the likes of MechWarrior Online at that time, who had taken a very bold step to effectively monetize their beta, which was, again, pretty much unheard of. People paying for early access for something that was going to be free to play. That's crazy, right? But actually it was starting to become a thing. Now you see it all the time. But we decided that would be our model, and that's what we'd adopt. And we've concentrated so far pretty much on North America and Western Europe. It's English only. We haven't done localization yet. It's part of our sort of plan ongoing. So again, that's what we did for the early stage. And there's kind of timeline of things we've done over that 20 months when we've been in early access. We did some free weekends, which taught us more about free-to-play and putting in free-to-play mechanics. And on Steam, I'm sure many of you are aware that even if you've got a paid product, you can allow people to have a go for free. Now, some people do this on more conventional games. Often it's something with a strong multiplayer component. But for us, as a game that was going to become free-to-play, it obviously made a lot of sense for us to stress test and go free for just a short period of time. And the first one we did, we had huge interest, and we were really not ready. When I look back, we had no tutorial, and our servers broke. We managed to fix them, although it was Friday night, and I was quite relaxed by then, thinking that it's all working. It broke. We fixed it quickly, which was good. The team did a great job. But what we could see in our in our data and looking at what the players were doing, they were confused, they didn't understand the game, because there was so much more we really needed to do to put out a game for free. We've got to a sort of a cadence of about monthly updates, and I'll go into that about what worked and what didn't shortly. I'm going to have to speed up a little bit, sorry translator. And what we did was gradually increase our studio size. We took on more investment. Increased what is Edge Case in November, December 2015, working up towards the 35 people you see now. Added in, okay, slower still, okay. Right, okay, it's a struggle for me. I didn't even have any coffee. So we added a shop. We put in metrics, we got an analyst into the game, into the studio, so we can really look at the funnel. We did all these things that we'd seen other free-to-play studios doing and understand that in what they were doing, and I think became more of a free-to-play based or biased studio. Okay, I'm going to jump slightly ahead because if I have to slow down. Okay, so, and we've just done the launch. Okay, so the main thing we're here for is what worked and what didn't from our perspective and what we want to talk about. So one of the things we think we did right was we really concentrated on the core gameplay. We're very proud of our game. I mean, everybody who makes a game is, but we think we've made something that's fun, that people really enjoy, and we spent quite a while prototyping that and getting it just right, trying it with different people. If you came to my talk yesterday, I talked quite a bit about this. But we think that's something that we've done that's good. We've honed the core gameplay experience. Of course, there's more to go on that, but that's something we think we did right. But there's a twist to that in a minute. We shared the core gameplay, so we shared a lot of what we did. Again, this is a huge part of the open development and early access talk. where we really worked with our player base. And I think that if you're a small studio and you're going to do free-to-play, you should consider this very strongly. Again, something I spoke about yesterday. I think that it works well, you get a really strong community, you get engagement, you get great feedback, etc., etc. Open development, I think, has been a success for us. We're really happy. That was the talk yesterday again. But again, these are the things that we think we did right. And, you know, we, as a studio, pretty much dived in with a huge amount of enthusiasm for free-to-play. You know, there's a little bit of concern and worry, but I don't think we had huge amounts of negativity. I'm fully aware of studios that I won't drop any hints. I'm fully aware of studios that have gone free to play and actually they had, you know, almost large-scale rebellions inside, or 50% of the studio just didn't want to do it, all these kind of things. So actually, I think my team, my guys, were all very enthusiastic and really jumped in with both feet. And obviously that's really important if you're going to do this, to have everybody behind you, because if you've even got a smallest amount that don't want to do it, don't like the model, then you're going to have an issue, you're going to have negativity and so on. So that was good. I think the other thing is that we have designed for esports, we've designed for competitive gameplay, and that means that it has a chance. Right? It's not up to us. Esports isn't up to the game's development or publisher to actually decide whether it becomes that. But you can certainly work to try and make sure your game doesn't mean that it's impossible. Right, and we've actually had tournaments going, we've had people having a lot of fun with it, and yeah, we'll see where it goes. That's up to the players to decide. And the other part, and I was talking to one of the analysts who gave a talk, is that the team really embraced metrics really, really well. And I've heard about, well, in fact, our analyst was talking about other studios where an analyst comes in and actually they get ignored, they get sat in the corner, they're doing a job because they say they need an analyst in the studio because that's what free-to-play games companies do. But actually, my team and the management, we literally embraced the analyst, literally, and took on board all the data, and we've looked at all that data with great enthusiasm. And the team are really inquisitive and really wanted to know what each number means and what that means for what they're doing and so on. So I think getting metrics in, getting an analyst if you can, and just really caring about that, because it really, really matters, especially in this space, as you can imagine. There's a whole bunch of other things that I could go on about, like agile, art quality. Almost obviously, I think we've done a really good job there. Recruitment has been really good. We've concentrated on making sure I'd have to swear, we don't take on a certain type of person in our studio. We're really careful about that. Being generous in what we do as much as we can, doing good research on what's out there and who's doing what right, looking around the industry, looking at everybody's influenced by lots of other games. So looking at who are the people doing the best practices and working out whether that's something that you can include in your mechanics. Okay, so let's move on to what we do differently, which is not necessarily what we did wrong, but what we might do in a parallel universe. And that's one of the things I wanted to make clear, is that quite a few of these, we can't be sure that if we did it differently, anything would be any better. But I've thought about this, I talked to the management team, we had good chats about it. So this is a list of things that we might do differently. And funnily enough, one of the things at the very top, I actually just said we did that right, which is core game focus. And we actually talked about whether we, at some point, we should have potentially done a little bit less of that. We did a lot of it, maybe to rein that in a bit, but it's really hard to know, because at the end of the day, if we did take our eye off the core game for a little while and concentrate on the meta game, which I'll get to, would we have such a good experience? Would the players be enjoying it so much? Would the Steam reviews be so good? Would the feedback from partners we talk to be so good? So it's a really hard decision to make for what you are, which is a games company. Should you start looking at the other aspects, or just really try and make just the best game possible? But at some point, you've got all these other things which are maybe more business related to put in, so you really have to think very, very hard about that choice. So maybe less core game focus. And that leads, interestingly, to the next one, which is Maybe for your first game that you do in free-to-play, if you're coming from this kind of field that we did, maybe do a less complex game. And I'll caveat that for that we bloody love our game, we're really proud of it, and we probably wouldn't do a less complex game or mode, but it was raised as an interesting point that perhaps when you try your first one, try and maybe go for something that's less complicated. Because yes, it's a challenge. It's hard making complex games with complex mechanics and in 3D space, which is all new that people haven't done before, and all these kind of things. So maybe not so jump in with both feet, but that's what we're like. That's what we do. That's what we did. So another thing was that we had no idea how much this would slow down our development. And this is something I've heard from many, many people who've done this. So if you're used to making a game as a team with a final delivery date, if you're going to go to a model whereby there's something out there live, and it's got a free-to-play mechanics in it as well, be prepared, and this is probably one of the biggest things, be prepared for your team to slow down to, some people have said a quarter, some people have said a third, but potentially a quarter of a third of your normal development speed. Imagine what that means for your feature roadmap that you're looking at. When you're sitting there saying, it's great, we'll have all this stuff in by next year, and then you're at quarter speed because you've got a live game out there that needs supporting, needs love, there's things that need changing or making better than they were because you have to react. It makes a huge difference. There's something to be seriously ready for, because especially if you're making promises to a partner or if you're making promises to the community, you need to be prepared for it taking a lot longer. With really good people, that's not necessarily the point. It's just what happens. I've spoken to many a free-to-play company who've gone, oh yeah, it's very different. So not hybridize the meta. That sounds more complicated, but basically one of the things I said at the very top is Fractured Space is, in its movie executive concept, was League of Legends meets World of Tanks in space. But actually we took in different component ideas, and one part of that was the metagame, was the unlocking of the spacecraft. And we mixed two business models into one, and went, this looks quite cool, this could work, but it caused confusion. And one of the reasons it caused confusion was that a lot of people are used to either one of those two models. So they looked at it and were confused if they come from a MOBA or League of Legends, and they were confused if they came from World of Tanks, and went, this is not, but it doesn't do what I expect, because these are two huge franchises that have taught audiences, certainly in the West, how free-to-play works. They've taught them it over several years. So we're sitting there going, we're clever, we've thought of something different and new. And obviously you want to innovate, you want to do something different and new, but an unlocking mechanism when you think you're being clever, actually what we've done is we've actually now taken it out and gone, A or B, A or B, A, right. And there's lots of reasons for why I chose A. You can ask me afterwards. It's complex, but we went down one route. So be careful of taking your influences and trying something really new potentially in free-to-play because of the huge audience that are used to one thing. Recruiting experts, I think we waited potentially too long to recruit experts into the team. Obviously it costs money, that's tricky, it takes time. But getting people in there that actually have done this, right? So I don't think it's necessarily us being cocky or arrogant. We were just getting on with it. We were looking at what's going on. We were doing well. We didn't necessarily have the money. And also experts are hard to find, certainly in the UK and the US and so on, in this space. Not that many people. If I look at the UK, who's doing what we do as a PC client-based free-to-play game? Virtually nobody. So how do I get these people? So it's tricky, and actually it's taken time to try and get people in or try and find people, and we're still looking. Bigger UI team, another aspect coming from, if any of you again have worked on console games, PC games where it doesn't have free-to-play, it's premium. There's so much more complexity and nuances to a game that has acquisition, retention, monetization built into its structure around the game. You're not just sort of making a racing game that has, well, I want to choose a car and I want to choose the track. You've now got a shop, you've got a hub, you've got some gacha mechanics you've dropped in, you've got something that's like a mission system, you've got all these other things that could go into your nominal racing game that sit on top. And those things are now live online, and you're going to change them because the metrics say that what you did there is different, is wrong. So the UI guy isn't finished. He's not finished ever, right? So our UI team, which for the longest time was an artist and a programmer making the UI, completely overloaded all the time. So if you want to make one of the games like ours, consider the size of your UI team, because it's going to be bigger than you think and they're going to be overworked, and you as the people influencing that product and looking at the metrics, you're going to ask a lot of your UI team, because an enormous amount of the features in these games sit around the game and are UI based. So I mentioned generosity, so this is another one which is definitely one of those, like in a parallel universe we don't know, is potentially not to be so generous. So we were being really generous. We've been really generous to our community because we feel it's the right thing to do, with our customers, and in certain circumstances where we've made a mistake in the way we've done something, we've given lots of money back into the economy and said, okay, we made a mistake, and so on and so on, because we're learning. But there's a school of thought which is maybe we just overdid that a little bit in a couple of places. It's hard, it's going to be very specific to you, but all I guess I'm saying is, if you're doing this, if you come across a point in your free-to-play game where you go, okay, we've got to put this pack out at this price, or we've got to refund a bunch of currency because we've now taken that out of our system, just really think hard about whether you're potentially going just one step too far and whether you need to. Right? And it's whether you need to is the important point here. So metrics in immediately. For the longest time, we really didn't. We knew we needed it. We know the concept. It's very clear. Everybody tells you. But actually putting in enough metrics, putting them soon enough, and having somebody on board that is that really understands it, we could have done that so much sooner, and it would have made a big difference, because certainly when we were looking at that first free weekend, when we were watching people come in the game, we would have been able to adjust and tune far quicker and far sooner, and then we may not have maybe burnt through so many people with a game that was losing people, but we didn't really even know it. Right? We knew it because we could say, well, where they've all gone. We didn't know why they were doing it. Obviously, metrics tells you so much. So I would definitely do that soon. And the big thing that I said at the first free weekend, we had no first-time user experience, no tutorial, no nothing. We just put the game out there, all excited. Our game's really, really cool. Anybody can play it. It's not that complicated. Shoved it on Steam, did a big promotion. Valve were wonderful. They gave us Spotlight and all this kind of thing. And we just couldn't understand why. When we were playing against people and we were looking at the forums, they said, I don't know how to play this game. And, we've all done it as games makers. There's a sense of... you get lost in your game and you go, it's pretty easy, I understand it. How hard can it be to move a mouse around and click? But yes, so that was, again, a huge, huge thing. Sounds really, really obvious in hindsight. I feel stupid standing here telling you something that sounds so blinking obvious. But actually, if you're doing something, releasing it early in alpha and so on, then you might think it doesn't really matter. But it did. We've lost people that may never come back. Because they said, I just didn't understand it. But they loved the concept. They got to the point where they clicked, they downloaded, they loaded up, they got to that point. So they wanted to play our game, but we burnt them, we lost them, just because we didn't tell them how to play our game. We didn't tell them how to play our game well enough. We had a video, like a box with a video, and watch our video. Nobody clicked on the video. Okay, we're nearly there. So a product manager, or product manager is a term that I hear being used more in mobile, where you've got somebody who's really thinking about, especially about metagames and monetization. So I've put acquisition, retention, monetization. It's actually more of a retention and monetization expert. So having somebody like that in earlier would make a big difference, I think. And we're still looking again for that perfect person, because they're rare. It's a rare commodity to have somebody who, again, you can probably trust with, if it's your one game like ours, potentially you're trusting with your whole business, listening to that person saying, okay, we need to retain and monetize, what's best practice, what should we do? But you do really want somebody who's done it before, if you can. But how many people have done it before? So if we could, we would earlier on that. And a big thing here is a lot of the decisions we made for our game and what we did are financially driven. At the end of the day, we're a small studio looking at the cliff edge of falling off, not that far away all the time, going, okay, we do need to make some more money, we need to raise some more money, etc. So quite a few things are financially driven. And actually, one of the things we put in was a gacha mechanic, a loot drop. And that's, we've heard and we believed and we talked to other people that it's really good financial driver, really good monetization. But we put it in too soon. We went, okay, we think it's pretty good, let's drop it in, and we hadn't quite tuned it right. And we had a big chunk of negativity, a refund, all this kind of stuff. And why did we do it? We did it because we needed the money. It's terrible, but I think a lot of you will sympathize. You've been in positions where you've gone, well, I've got to put this decision. Either you've got to release the game, but in this situation, it's releasing a feature. So releasing a feature and a monetization feature just a little bit too early. Not massively early, just it needed a bit more thought and observance on some of its mechanics. So if we could, and that's really important on here because you don't sometimes have a choice in these things. Focus more on retention features. I know we've got way more to do in this area. It's one of the biggest focuses after our recent launch that we're going to be looking at and spending more time on elements of the game, but mainly around the meta game, and even we've got a meta game planned. That's a long story, that really, really retain the player and keep them in for the longest time. Because again, if you're looking at free-to-play, effectively, the thing you're after is trying to get the lifetime value over the cost of acquisition. And it sounds like an enormously formulaic thing for your entire business to come down to those things. That's what it's about. So if you can keep them in the game and keep them spending money, then that's it. Some people might have other challenges. They might have a game that retains people but makes no money. Right? There's no ARPU, there's no ARPU. That's another thing, by the way, you've got to learn all these new terms. But in terms of monetization, we do all right, but we just need to keep people in the game longer. So maybe an earlier focus on retaining and retention mechanics and those things that are involved. But they're tricky. How to keep somebody playing your game for the longest time? It's a skill that we're still learning. So social mechanics, I could do a whole talk on social mechanics. I've spent a lot of time in China this last year and learnt a lot about social mechanics in free-to-play. And actually, I would like to, if possible, have had to learn some of that earlier and put some in. So I suppose it's more advice for you, because even my past self, there wouldn't be a way to do it. But if you can, learn about some of the social mechanics in free-to-play and how they affect free-to-play business models, and look at some of the things that go on in China and some of the things on mobile. Even if you're not doing mobile, there's some things in there that are coming that will make a big difference, and they're really important as well. So more player observance. I think we work with our community, but you can't see them playing. You can't literally watch over their shoulders. So actually looking at, even if it meant just going to like one of the smaller, not trade shows, one of the smaller consumer shows, setting up something small, just letting people queue up and have a play, and have some of our team just watch over their shoulders to see what they're doing. Because you get isolated in your own studio, in your own bubble. You're looking at forums, you're watching videos, you make these huge assumptions. But when you sit somebody down behind your game that's never played it before, then it's a whole new world. And I appreciate big studios can afford, testing rooms with glass windows and spend time and money on this. But potentially you're small like us. So how do you do it? Just take yourself to a few shows and watch. And it shouldn't cost you much money or time. I have to go quicker now. Okay, brand expertise, things like this. So again, we've only recently brought this on board, but I think actually coming in early, we did it very indie, we did it the way we thought it would be good, but actually when you get an expert in, you realize experts are experts. They really understand brand and branding. They make a big difference. So again, sooner if you can. An interesting one potentially, I mentioned this to somebody else who was talking about free-to-play with me, caught me outside and said, another piece of big advice perhaps. And I think that possibly when we went into early access with an always online, always running game, one of the things you think about constantly is you never want to have 0 players, right? Because even if you think, well, it'll only be for an hour or two, you don't want ever, ever, ever for that to happen. And we're really proud that for 20 months plus, we've always had games all the time, always running. But actually, what I've seen some people do is in their very first releases, they say the game's only up on Saturday, or the game's only up on Thursday, or it's just up for a couple of hours. In hindsight, right at the beginning, that probably would have been useful, because we could have done a little bit more time and focus on development, but also it would have meant less potentially obsessing about making sure we never got to zero and what we would need to do to make sure that happens, and so on and so on. So think about maybe just gradually building up towards 24/7, 7 days a week. We went straight away for that, and that's a challenge. It's a challenge, and you probably all know, if you read in a Steam review and people say empty servers, game's dead, finish it, uninstall, you never want to see that, right? So that was a risk, and more experimentation. It's again something in hindsight, just trying a few more different things, but it's difficult. Again, you've only got so many people, you've only got so much time. A bit more experimentation would have been good. Okay, so to conclude. So many of these things generally are linked to time, and time is money, and people and money. So really, a lot of the things we've had to do, and the choice we've made, are linked to pure hard cash. Right? And it's your business. You know what's in the bank. You know what the people cost. You know the choices you have to make. So there's a lot of things on that list. I can look back in hindsight and said, we should have done this, we should have done that. Some of them I go, yeah, but we couldn't afford it. We couldn't do that because we hadn't got the money. But some of them, in a different world, you could have made a different choice where to put your money. So hopefully some of the things I've said will make you think about the choices that you make. But I absolutely am a realist in this. So many things are linked to what's in the bank. Right? So you have to make certain choices. So don't feel too bad about it. If you have to make those choices, those are the choices. Live with it. And move on, and then maybe do a talk in 2 years, and then talk about what you would have done if you'd have had loads of money, and so on. So, like I said, the thing is that time and money, these things come together in the things, but it's not always a good thing, because actually I genuinely think if we'd have had a much bigger budget for what we did, I don't think we would have necessarily achieved what I'm very proud of that we've done today, and that because it's kept us a bit more lean, a bit more focused, we've made hard decisions, we've stayed more cohesive as a team. There's a whole list of things I think that you as people who run smaller studios would appreciate what that means to have a bit more of a fear in your heart because of the smaller budgets that you have and the money that you have to spend. It might feel horrible at times, but I think it makes you make really well thought through decisions most of the time. So don't fear too much if you haven't necessarily got the cash to do all these things, but please do take some of my advice. Again, this is very much from my perspective and our studio's perspective on taking something which was a studio that was making games pretty much for a disc or for one business model through to another. And these are the things we would have done differently. And I think the team, if you've got a good team, they will adapt. They will adapt, you'll adapt, and I think you'll really enjoy the new model that you're moving into. So that's my talk. Any questions?
What you said about free play, and for me it's the main question for a small team. Where the measure between free-to-play and pay-to-win? How to save the balance?
A really good question that we have spent sometimes too much time obsessing and worrying about. Having travelled the world and seen different free-to-play models in different countries, we've gone and chosen a very much, because we're on Steam, and Steam is North American focused, a North American free-to-play model, which means that it's as balanced as it can possibly be with no buying of power, etc., etc. That's where we focused our attention. You might, who knows what you're making your game, what audience you're making your game for. If you're making your game for a Russian audience, you might make some small changes in that. You might be some element of power. If you're making it for the Far East, you potentially are selling nothing but power, right? But so it does change. Our choice was something where we were absolutely terrified of somebody going, this game's pay to win. And of course, one of the things with working with the community and working with open development as we do is in fact we have evangelists in our community that immediately dive on and say, this game's not pay to win. Where's the pay to win? If you remember when I mentioned about the hybridization of the metagame, the kind of the League of Legends meets World of Tanks metagame, that was the area, and one reason we pulled it, because it was an area where people were confused by just having a quick look at the game in their first hour and going, this game, that looks like pay to win. It wasn't, but it looked like it was. So again, you've got to be careful of a perception that you could generate, even if you know in your heart, and you know in your data, you know in your game balance that it's not pay to win. So yes, you should worry about this if you're making a game that's going to work in the West, I think. But don't worry too much, right? Just get it right, and then if somebody wants to jump on your forums and you shout about pay to win, okay, well, I know that I've done it right. Just let them burn themselves out shouting.
One last question, and after that we are a little bit short on time. So,
thank you for your information. It's very, very cool.
It's a pleasure.
Question: Can you give advice how to build advertisement company, how to increase acquisition?
So how to build an advertisement company?
Yep.
I don't know. That's not me. I can't help you with that. Acquisition-wise, we've done everything we've done to pretty much to this point by either what Steam have done for us, so doing some promotion and having a good relationship with them, or we've done it organically and through our community. So it's all about going early access, being open development, having good community management. So all of that has was our literally to this week was the way of spending any money on user acquisition and so on. And then this last week we've spent as much money as we can afford, which is not much, on going out there, engaging with a PR company, buying some advertising, which is completely and utterly a new area for me. I'm going to be learning all about how that worked next week. And just actually spending some cash on this and moving into a whole new phase. In terms of what you asked, I don't have enough information about the answer to that. But there are people out there, so I would look up those companies and look at what they do and how they do what they do. Network until you find somebody who can help you. There you go. So, sorry for running on a bit long, so there's no more time for any more questions. But thank you very much.